Hey, how's it going? It's Kayagami here, bringing you back another video. This is my State of PvP commentary for the Update 46 patch. Our Update 46 brought subclassing to the game, which means there are a lot of changes and a lot of just new things in PvP, and there's a lot to talk about. Before we get started, I'm going to talk about this gameplay. This is a 67 kill battleground. A lot of people ask me how my builds do in battlegrounds. This is the status effect God build. And so feel free to enjoy this and let me know your thoughts on it. Now, before that person who's never gotten 20 kills in a battleground a day in their life says that all these guys are bots, obviously they're bots. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to drop almost 70 kills. But no matter what and who's in the BG, I feel like it's a pretty cool accomplishment to drop that many. So enjoy and quit hating. Now let's get into the video and the commentary. So the layout is I'm going to talk about four major topics. I'm going to talk about PvP from a general standpoint. I'm going to talk about it from Cyrodiil, dueling, and a battleground perspective. Now, one thing I'll say is I only can speak on PCNA. I don't play PlayStation, or I haven't, should I say, since 2020. I don't play any of the EU servers, no Xbox, so this is solely for PCNA. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about, and it's because it's the most concerning to me, is population. So on my server, population has been extremely low when it comes to PvP. The game itself, I know, has more population since subclassing has come out, but from PvP perspective, I mean, Blackreach was full every weekend. Grey host queues were insane, even on weekdays. Doesn't matter. Both campaigns have suffered from, this drop in population, if you will. And so I honestly thought that subclassing was going to bring even more players back to the game. And it's really easy to say, oh, it's because nobody likes subclassing. It's because the game's too AIDS or there's too much damage. I just don't know how much I can believe that when High Isle, the Oaken Soul meta, the, never get out of corrosive DKs, those were all a thing, and PvP population was higher than ever. And so I don't think the conversation is as simple as like, oh, it's just AIDS. Now, I do want to say that since they made scribing free, I'm curious to see how once people level their scribing and do all that good stuff, if it changes anything, because scribing is so important to subclassing. I mean, your build options are very limited without scribing. And I know a lot of people didn't want to pay for Gold Road. Very understandable. But now it's free. So I'm wondering if that helps things. So I guess we'll see. And maybe my opinion on pop will change over the coming weeks. But as of now, population over the, a month and a half-ish since the patch came out has been concerning, to say the least. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, let me just talk about overall, my thoughts on subclassing and how it's affected PvP. I think damage is crazy right now. Obviously, Monomyth came out. People are choosing the lines that have really, really high crit damage passives. And so crit damage is insane. And so it's essentially forced most outnumbered PvPers to run Rallying Cry and Resilience and wear a lot of Inpen because otherwise you're just going to get nuked. And I like high damage metas, but it can make the game a bit more challenging. It kind of works both ways where you can, it's harder to survive, but pretty much everyone can die. So that's the good news. I guess it's a little give and take there, but damage is really high. Critical damage is really high. And overall, I think that's good for the game. And I like that better than tank metas. So I guess that's all I have to really say about that. One thing, so that's one good thing. I talked about pop. That wasn't great. So here's kind of another negative point is I thought build versatility was going to be better. And what I mean by that is it feels like there's really two types of builds that people play to be competitive, because if you don't run one of these two types of builds, you're probably getting, pooped on. And that's the storm calling or the restoring light builds. And you all know who I'm talking about. There are many variations of them. But it's essentially, the Stamsork type builds, the Magsork type builds, or there's the full meta animal companions, assassination, and restoring light builds. And there's a couple variations of that build as well. And when I did my tier list on the skill lines, I was actually pretty accurate, and I'll put that in the description if you want to look at that tier list. But I had animal companions, assassination, and restoring light as my S tier. And I think that is valid. I think that's clear as day based on how people play and what people pick. People aren't, generally speaking, going to play weak classes or choose weak skill lines. They're just not. And so I think that overall, I clearly assessed what were going to be the best skill lines, and I think that stands true today. And so build versatility in general, I thought was going to be better. Not to say people haven't come up with cool stuff, because I have seen some pretty cool builds. But for the most part, you know, there's 2 types of builds out there. 3 types, if you count the mag and stam versions or the ranged versions versus the melee versions of these builds. But for the most part, yeah, they're all, you know, pretty similar. And so that has been a little disappointing. And then I just think overall, you know, those are kind of my general thoughts. And so I'm a little more negative this time than times past. Normally, I'm a lot more positive about the state of PvP, but, you know, it just is what it is. I'm going to be honest, and I'm not just going to, you know, say good things just because. And so next, let's get into Cyrodiil. And so I feel like I say this every time I make a state of PvP video, but it's really just getting worse in the sense that people are extremely cowardly in Cyrodiil. And they also are getting more delusional by the patch. And what I mean, and for example, is people have called me cowardly because me and Quinn, or me and whoever I'm playing with, we're 2vxing. There's 12 of them, there's 2 of us. They'll take the resource, we obviously run in the tower. And you know, everybody knows what all the Zerglings like to say. You're a tower humper, you're a rock humper, whatever. So I have a serious question. So if you're a Zergling, please answer this in the comments if you can. Why can't we do things to make it a more even fight? I.e., going in a tower, because we get some line of sight and things like that. And a lot of times we still die anyway. But so basically, the Zerglings want us to fight them open field and in guards. That's what they want. Otherwise, we're the ones that are scared. But you have 12 of you, 15 of you, 16, whatever, however many it is. And so I genuinely want that question answered. So if you're a Zergling and you have a even decent answer, please put it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. And I think from the other Cyrodiil perspective is with there being really high damage, I feel like it's really easy to get caught. And so you have to be a lot more in your game, both for outnumbered players and, large group players, because you can just get caught like super easily. The contingency, shocks, bows, it's too easy to get nuked this patch. It just is, unless you're like a tank. But if you're playing a high damage, especially like a storm calling build, you can get 2-shot by most things. It really is like that, which is crazy, but that's just how it feels. So open world is definitely a little more challenging. Nothing that most good players won't be able to deal with, but it is a little more challenging in that regard because people have, at least gotten decent at putting on, okay builds. And so that's just kind of the differences I'm noticing. Another point in Cyrodiil is, I don't have a ton good to say for the simple fact, there's just not the population. I did switch to yellow, and I'll say my fights have been a lot better because blue has just been straight Zerging the past 3 months. And I'm sure it'll change and I'll go back to blue or whatever. But for now, I'm playing on yellow, so there's that piece. And I would say the fighting has been a lot better. But yeah, I would just say how Zerglings play and, the high damage has made Cyrodiil change just a little bit. But overall, I haven't seen anything catastrophic. From a dueling perspective, it just feels like it's a styles make fight kind of meta. Meaning, I feel like I've fought certain builds, and I won't say any names, but I feel like I fought certain builds that, it doesn't matter how much better I am than them, I could never win. Specifically, like there's like range builds that run like Gravelord, Blastbones, you know, Gerals, and they're like Magstorks. So they can just like run away from you. And you can't heal. They do crazy damage to you. I mean, there's just no counterplay. And so I'm not a big dueler anyway, but it feels like there are just certain things that, you know, depending on what build you're on, even down to like what skills you might have on, it feels like you might be at a very, very big disadvantage, no matter how much better you might be than that player. Just because, you know, whatever build you have on just can't compete with that other one. So I don't know. That's kind of all I have to say about dueling, but overall it's the same. But I'm not the biggest dueler, so don't take my word on everything. And last but not least, Battlegrounds hasn't changed a whole lot. I mean, like I mentioned, there's a ton of damage, you know, but it's pretty typical. I mean, proc builds have been a thing for a while in Battlegrounds, and so I don't think that's changed. But that's all I have for you guys this time. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts on the state of PvP, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.